I will not go 10,000 miles from here to help murder and kill another poor people simply to continue the domination of white slave masters over the darker people of the earth.
Your freedom. Well, now, well, see, you make yourself look crazy. Talking about, I shouldn't go.
I work for the government, for part of the government.
Well, I work for God.
For my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight?
We have been brainwashed. Everything good and of authority was made white. We look at Jesus, we see a white with blonde hair and blue eyes. We look at all the angels, we see white with blonde hair and blue eyes. Now I'm sure if there's a heaven in the sky and the color folks die and go to heaven, where are the color angels? They must be in the kitchen preparing the milk and honey. Even Tarzan, the king of the jungle in back Africa. Such things as movies, commercials, advertisements, endorsements, and even the heavyweight championship of the world. This is all down to me if I will only give up my belief, if I will only deny the honorable Elijah Muhammad and the truth that God has given to me. Why should me and other so-called Negroes go 10,000 miles away from home here in America to drop bombs and bullets on other innocent brown people who's never bothered us? We believe in obeying the laws of the land. We are taught to obey the laws of the land as long as it don't conflict with our religious beliefs. Whatever the punishment, whatever the persecution is for standing up for my religious beliefs, even if it means facing machine gun fire that day, I will face it before denouncing Elijah Muhammad and the religion of Islam. I'm ready to die.
Muhammad Ali has just said, we are all victims of the same system of oppression. And even though we may have different religious beliefs, this does not at all bring about a difference in terms of our concern.
One more time, who's the champ of the world?
Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. That is truly my brother. I'm a little, I've got Muhammad Ali by 10 months older than him. So this is my real brother being raised and raised black in America. So you see his resistance to being drafted. Now, I was in the service 60 to 64, and you didn't think about denying, well, I volunteered, so I didn't have to worry about a draft. But we were proud of being in the service. But the Vietnam War changed our tune. We saw how they were drafting black men like crazy and putting them in a situation where they were being persecuted here in America, and they had to go off to a foreign land. And this heavyweight champion of the world gave up his title because he refused to go in the service. Of course, they would have put him someplace entertaining people. He wouldn't have to, but the principle, it was against his religion, the black Muslim religion, to be an objective.
Conscientious objective.
Conscientious, what was it?
Conscientious objector.
Right. What say, well, you remember those days?
Oh, yeah. Muhammad Ali, and we saw the last clip with Muhammad and Martin.
Yeah.
The two entities coming together.
Yeah.
Christianity and Islam coming together to speak truth against evil.
Yeah.
And they were anachronistic in that they were out of the time warp. You know, to speak against quote unquote blind patriotism. But both men stood, and we know that Martin really caught hell after that speech at Riverside on why he opposed the Vietnam War. So Muhammad, I love, we all love Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
We watched his fights. I saw every one of his fights.
Yeah.
And I know when I was in college in the 60s, you know, they stripped him of his title, But he came back and regained it. And he came back as a bigger champion for the people because he was not going to compromise his faith for the government of the United States or for any government. And you had to respect that. And God honored what he did in taking that stance against what was wrong. I had a similar conflict myself. I signed my contract in 1968 while I was at City College. And Tiger Woods.
68? Okay.
I was in my sophomore year. I was in the ROTC program. And all of our cadre officers were former Green Beret. And I had a Lieutenant Colonel Earl D. Woods, and we got to be very close. My best friend left school and went to Nam, and he wrote me from Nam. And James L. McEvely said, don't find yourself here. He said, we're doing to the Vietnamese what the Nazis were doing to the Jews. But I had already signed my contract, so I had to make a decision. Am I going to do what the government wants me to do, or what am I going to do? Am I going to do what is right? And I went in that next day and I gave Lieutenant Colonel Woods the letter because he knew Jimmy, and he nodded his head. He had dealt with the Ku Klux Klan growing up in Kansas. So we had a long talk. He said, well, we got to take it to the full colonel. He was the lieutenant colonel. We'll take it to the colonel and he'll make a decision. I said, no, I've made a decision. I'm not serving. I'll go to prison, but I will not serve. And we had a talk, and the colonel said, oh, you signed a contract. And I hit him. I was a history major. I hit him. I said, your people signed 350 contracts with the people that own this land.
Indians.
That you've stolen from, and you're still in possession of stolen property. When you can show me a contract or a treaty that you all signed with the Algonquin, the Arapaho, whomever, the Choctaw, the Blackfoot, then come and see me. And I said, I'm out. And I left. They gave me a 1A draft status, and I never got called. They had the draft lottery. My number came up. I never got a call. And I'm sure that Lieutenant Colonel Woods is the one that did whatever went on that I never got called. And I told my sons about him because he was Tiger Woods' father. So Tiger Woods' father probably saved my life and gave them life at the same time. But we have to take stands. We have to take a stance for what is right consistently through time. And that's the only way we're going to survive, no matter what it looks like.
Well, that's the past. And we're still fighting an even bigger battle now. Run item one, affirmative action. When Ron comes on, or a little later, but let's run this piece. It's about affirmative action, which
Well, let me just be clear. I got into Harvard only because of affirmative action. I went to a school no one had ever heard of in Denver, Colorado, in a small suburb. I didn't go to Exeter or Andover. I didn't have college test prep. I just happened to be really nerdy and smart and have really good grades and good SAT scores. But someone came to Denver, Colorado to look for me. A Harvard recruiter flew to Denver, and I met up with her at the Village Inn restaurant and did a pre-interview to get to pull me into Harvard. I was pulled in, and the schools like Harvard and Yale that I got into affirmatively. Yes. And it was literally not saying we're going to take an unqualified person and put them in Harvard. Yes. We're going to take a very qualified person who we would never know existed and put them in Harvard. That's how I got there. That's how Ketanji got there. That's how Justice Jackson, I should say. Justice Jackson got there. It's how Clarence Thomas got there.
Well, I think that this is tantamount to sticking a dagger in our back, because what they have said now is that it is unconstitutional to even consider race. And given the racial history of the country, let's not act like blacks are behind because there's something in our genes that made us behind. It was against the law for us to even read and write until 160 years ago. We were enslaved 246 years. So it is to completely throw to the wind the history of why we needed affirmative action in the first place. Secondly, let's remember that affirmative action was a conservative remedy that came out of the Nixon administration, written by Art Fletcher. So now you have a right-wing Trump court, because let's not forget Trump nominated a third of the sitting court, 9 members, 3 of which Trump put on there, that is saying, well, we'll protect your voting rights on Thursday, Friday, and Monday, and then we're going to pull the rug from under you in terms of you being able to have an even consideration. We're not even talking about a mandatory, a consideration of race to higher education. My last point that really is frightening to me is now in the private sector, corporations, many of whom made pledges around the George Floyd movement that didn't live up to them, can now say, well, we can't consider race in terms of contracts and employment and board members and what we do in the community, because the court now is saying it's unconstitutional. This is a tremendous setback that must be resisted by every corner, including the Department of Justice and including states, because what they have said is that it is unconstitutional to even consider race. And I think it is unimaginable not to consider race, given the history of this country and given the data that we still see in this country.
When we're not included, that is a matter of consideration of race. They consider white people for a position. That is the consideration of race. See, so they can't have it both ways. If they don't want black people or non-whites.
All that's by the wayside. Come now with Trump in office. I just got a text. Elon Musk just put Social Security on the chopping block. I was notified just now.
A non-governmental official.
How is it that he's doing what he's doing? How is it now? We're fighting about whether they would consider us, and now all this by the wayside, and now it's blatant racism.
Well, you got to remember.
Well, the Nazis have taken over.
The majority of the people on Social Security in this country are not black people.
I know.
They're white people. So.
Well, Medicaid and
Medicare, welfare, SNAP. All of the benefit programs, whites predominantly are the masses. So
it's not the color thing anymore.
Right.
With Trump.
And what I'm so glad to see white people demonstrating in the winter.
They're losing the most.
All right, because this is what they asked for. This is what they wanted. Now they don't like what they wanted.
But they're firing Republicans.
Regardless, but Trump can say, well, in the final analysis, Elon did it.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. He was supposed to come in and show us how to work everything out.
So why is he doing all this?
You see,
to get back?
So, well, you're not going to call. We know Elon is a racist. We know that.
Yeah.
South African.
We know
raised in
Trump's
apartheid. We know Trump is a racist.
All right.
You see, but Elon and his little minions are running around. I don't understand how they can just show up someplace and tell people to leave. Because, I mean, back in the day, you show up at our place, you got your behind beat, and you were sent out. But here, Trump will be able to say, well, I didn't do it, Elon did it. But he did do it because he brought Elon to the table.
That's right.
So this is his administration. What Wall Street, the stock market, and that ad he did at the White House promoting Tesla cars. You know,
and the stock is going down, and I think they're just making money out of selling short.
Yeah, but the thing is that this is what the people wanted. Now they don't want it. It's too late. This is what you chose, and you're going to have to eat the meal that you prepared.
They didn't choose this.
They chose him. They chose him.
That's what they chose.
And they knew what he was about. And let's not forget his prior 34 indictments. Let's not forget the first thing he did coming out the gate this year was to pardon
1,600
the people that desecrated the Capitol.
Right.
And this is a repeat, folks. It's a repeat of Reconstruction when the U.S. government forgave the Confederates and allowed them to come back into the Congress, into the Senate, The black people that were in the U.S. Congress in the 1870s were pushed back out, the Klan rose up, and the vote was taken from the people. This is a repeat.
Yeah.
It's a repeat. And we need to be very much aware. The only difference here is that as he's attacking Social Security, which is us,
Which is everybody.
right? But the majority of the people are white people. And ultimately, one of his Second Amendment people are going to get tired. They don't have the services that we have here in most of these rural areas, West Virginia. There are counties in West Virginia, there isn't even a hospital in the county.
Well, I think we're going to see everybody rise up to what's right. Because this is not the American dream in any form or fashion. This is contradictory to everything we've fought for over the years. And when people realize what's actually going on, when they see themselves getting fired the way they are, you see a rise up in everyone. So it's no longer just us, it's everybody.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to burn the house down and he's a puppet for Putin. See what he's doing to Ukraine?
Right.
I mean, I don't know how people can sit here and watch this. I mean, it's so unbelievable that the people in the Senate are doing what they're doing in the House. I mean, well, he's picking people, the yes people. Anybody does anything for money. Well, you can see what Musk is doing. $400 billion?
Well, that's capitalism at its best. Capitalism
That
is
is worse.
contrary.
It's worse.
You know, they throw the words out: communism, socialism, capitalism, all these isms. But I was looking at a text.
Well, Social Security is socialism.
Right. What is wrong with that?
Nothing.
As though being leftist is wrong because you're not a right
had
wing.
a blend of the two.
Thank you. The eagle has a
Socialism.
right and a left wing. That's how the eagle flies. That's where it gets its strength. You got to have both sides, working from the breast, from the center. But they are solely one-sided in what they want to do, and they live on lies.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to tell you that the sun is shining in the middle of the night. And the idiocy and stupidity of the people that follow this, now they want to cry and complain. Mm-hmm. Well, this is what you chose. God will give you what you want in some cases. He'll give it to you. He's not sending it to you. He'll let you get what you want to teach you a lesson. And right now, this is where the people of this country need to understand they got what they asked for. And even if there was fraud in the election or any chicanery, this is what they wanted. You cannot be so blind.
This is what Trump wanted.
It's what he wanted. Well, I don't have to eat what he's putting on the table.
Elon bought America for $300 billion.
That's capitalism. Capitalism is about money.
Segregation.
It's about making
Nazism.
money. And that has nothing to do with
He's
God.
a Nazi.
It's all about greed and domination. There's no God in any of that.
Is he not a Nazi? He
Yes.
gave the salute.
As far as I'm concerned.
Why is it not people waking up to? He sided with the Russians. I mean, why isn't he a traitor? He's a traitor. He's burning down the house. He's killing America. And what are we doing?
Starving black people to death in the Sudan. 25 million people are dying now in the Congo. You don't hear a word about the starvation going on in the Congo.
You do.
For the minerals
You do on
that
public
they're being
access.
forced to dig up
You don't,
to provide
you don't
for
see it
cell
in the
phones.
main media,
No,
but
they
you
don't.
see in the public. Remember MNN and all the public service outlets. Democracy Now! Shows what's happening in the Middle East.
Amy Goodman.
How they're taking over the West Bank. You don't see any of that on the major stations. And you got to come to MNN to get the real deal. And public television. Public,
Right.
what's it
Even
called?
the fella they arrested and took, the man's here in New York. They took him to Louisiana. Louisiana has no jurisdiction over what he did in New York. But they take him to a federal district in Louisiana. Why? His wife is pregnant, separate. His attorneys are here in New York. He lives in New York. You take him to Louisiana. And he can't confer with his attorney. They said they will allow him today a phone call with his attorney. And the attorneys have been complaining they have not been able to speak with him.
Didn't they take $400 million away from Columbia University in funding?
Yes, they did.
$400 million away
in other
from
words,
Columbia. Has anybody heard about all this?
Yeah, you cannot disagree with Israel on anything, because if you do, you're anti-Semitic. Israelis are not Semites, that's the first thing. But the fact that you don't agree with what Netanyahu was doing, I don't agree with what Netanyahu was doing.
People
you have the right to
don't.
speak.
They were protesting against him before October 7th. All right, well, just to give you a little glimpse of what we're doing in Harlem. You must see this. I'm just going to play a few minutes of Reverend Sharpton doing a eulogy at Abyssinian Baptist Church this past evening, Monday. Run that piece on item 3. All right? We'll be right back at you. Perhaps Ron will be on by then.
Somewhere I read that if men hate...
Agenda 27.
We must return to the roots of who we are and fight the fight based on who and what we are and what the fight has been about, and stop letting people reinterpret us to divert and distract us from what we're supposed to be. That's what this is about. That's what Wyatt T. Walker taught us. An authentic calling rather than a commercial venture. You've commercialized the pulpit and bought you. But you won't last. Because everything that is not built on an eternal word will pass in a contemporary setting. That's why those, I love that sermon. One of them, Dr. Walker, you talk about the power of decision. You got to decide at some point in your life what you stand for and who you stand with. Everybody can't stand with you if you stand for something. I was growing up, most folk in Brooklyn would not stand with the King movement. They were with other movements, thought we was whatever. But I stood anyhow. Church I was going to was not political. My pastor, Bishop Washington, understood. A lot of folks told me, oh, he done backslid. He out there in the world. But I had to get their kids jobs after a while. Because I stood for something. Somewhere I read that if men hate you, remember they hated me. But he went to the cross to show that you can conquer the crucifixion. If you are afraid of the crucifixion, you'll never make the resurrection. You can't get to your crown without your cross. You're trying to be popular rather than prophetic. And let me say this and I'll let you go. There is this whole thing, as I said, about those that tweeted me about Gardner and those that tweeted me about Monique, that you forget that life is an evolving situation. The only thing that don't grow is something that's dead. So whatever you see at one stage is not where they're going to be at another stage. And you cannot be afraid to let God grow you. And you cannot be ashamed of where he grew you from. Well, I knew you win. Yeah, you did. And look at what God did for me now. Throughout the Bible, God changed people. He changed the name, Abram to Abraham, Saul to Paul. He changes people. So you might have come up a rough way, but that don't mean that God can't smooth you out. Sometimes God needs ex-junkies to tell other folk how to get clean. Sometimes God needs ex-crooks to tell other people you ain't got to go that way. Don't stop me where you want in my life because I'm not finished yet. Be patient with me. God ain't through with me yet. And it ain't no new Al Sharpton, it's the evolution of the old Al Sharpton. Oh, I knew Al back when he's changed. No, I grew. I'm the same Al Sharpton. I'm just grown up. I knew you when you was big and fat. I always knew there was a fine, slim me down there. I just had to carve and chisel till I got down to him. You and you. God gonna evolve you and grow you and make you to be who he brought you here to be.
Yeah. That's my pastor on Saturdays.
He's
very sharp.
Speaking the truth.
I was hoping that we had eulogy in there. Do you have it in the back there? Did we download that one?
No, I think it's number 3.
Number 3. Ah.
And I said, well, you're going to have to give me something to work with. I say that because I hope tonight, when you see people from Stevie Wonder, Lauryn Hill, and my brother Wycliffe. All these people could be anywhere, Valerie. The reason we're here is because she made a difference. And we should all ask ourselves, when it comes our time, will they pack a church for you? If Roberta would here tonight, she would tell you, don't just praise me, emulate me, and make a difference, because you have a light and an ability yourself. Because Roberta lived against the odds and made a difference. We act as though it was easy for what she did. I would use a scripture, it would be Psalms 137. 4th verse said, how can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? I heard several people this evening, it was an early afternoon, it just got to be evening. Talk about Roberta's genius, but her genius should not make us forget the hard road she had to travel to become who she became. I first met Roberta Flack in 1970. I was 13 years old. I was youth director for Operation Breadbasket in New York under Jesse Jackson. And he brought her to a rally in Brooklyn, Bethany Baptist Church. And all the way until a few weeks ago, she and I always stayed in touch. There was never a cause that we would ask her to weigh in. She wouldn't weigh in. And there never was something we would do that she was not there. She never let her stardom get in the way of her commitment. She never felt that she was bigger than that girl from Carolina that God used to make a statement to the world. In many ways, she was counterculture. You got to remember, in the 70s, we were all going to black exploitation films, Superfly, and all kind of 100 rifles, all kind of depiction of blacks as gangsters and thugs. And then there was some making music that degraded our women and degraded our families. And in the midst of all of this comes this woman that sung with a voice that it looked like the heavens themselves had given. This woman with a regal bearing that put a soundtrack to black dignity. That would make us stand up and rear our shoulders back. She wasn't having us calling our women out their name. She had us saying, "First time I ever saw your face." She made us all rise up a step higher. And when I look at that generation, Susan Taylor, who took essence and made us think different about ourselves. Ashton and Simpson, we have hidden some of the gems. And when you think small, you become small. When you enjoy music of depravity, then depravity becomes normal. When you normalize gangsters and thugs, you end up with someone with 34 felonies in the White House.
It's a shame we have to come back to reality of that 34 count criminal in the White House with his racist hitman. Elon Musk at the helm of all these firing of Education Department, Social Security Department, cutting everything in half, work-wise. So it makes everything difficult for everybody. I mean, it's no longer color. It's just if you got $1 billion, you're a part of his club, and if you don't, you go by the wayside. They have to. I don't see how anybody in this environment can have all that money and be that selfish. I mean, that's a demonic spirit, because that's so against God. I mean, why is this going on? I ask God. So I have to pray harder and harder each day. Next month I'll be 84 years old. And I take so much pride in saying that because I'm surprised I survived and I'm still sane, having to deal with all the junk that's going on in the last 80 years. But I find out since I've turned 80, it's become rougher than the other 80 before it.
Well, those 80 prepared you. Those 80 prepared you for the 5. That building. Remember when Rev talked about, I knew you when,
Yeah.
He said, but yeah, he's a slimmer, leaner person. So those 80 years have built you into who you are today. And it's not about...
It was through the experiences I went through.
Right. So it's not about thinking that.
I was blessed through all that garbage.
Right, and you're going to make it through this
I
garbage.
know, but how do I bring or leave a legacy? It's a calling. I feel it's a calling to be here and survive at the godly. Yeah, I mean, I've had God in my heart for so long. I've had guardian angels on my shoulder. I've been blessed all my life.
And that's not going to change.
Regardless
of who's in the White House, that's not going to change.
All of us are blessed. We all have that spirit in us. Mm-hmm. You see, we're just talking about Roberta Flack. You can feel the energy in the room. I mean, I always say we're spiritual people. But when you come to find out that the only way we'll survive all this nonsense is with God. So that's the only answer. And Trump, Elon Musk, they're definitely a demonic spirit.
Right.
So it's going to take us to really concentrate on our good side to get the devil out of us.
My old
the
pastor,
human kit comes with God and the devil. That's all human beings. So when we simplify things, you've got God and the devil in you, and you get to choose which way you go. So that's everybody, every human on the planet is given those basic ingredients. You either go with the devil in you, or you go with the God in you. Now, us laying it down like that, simplifying, showing myself as that's why I do the Gilchrist experience. Because all I do is talk about what I go through. And hopefully it helps other people. I've been doing this for nearly 30 years, just one program. And before that, I went through life like everybody else. I had a little devil in me. There were parts of my life that were demonic. Or I scathed through it, or I floated through it, but I had to have all those experiences. Like I always knew there was a good guy in me somewhere.
But
there was always a good guy there anyway.
That's the thing you look at. Everybody will concentrate on the negative.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at the very positive. Even Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, Paul was a bounty hunter of Christians.
That's right.
He was there when Stephen became the first martyr of the church. Paul was there. But God used Paul to write most of the New Testament.
Right.
Peter, who was there with Jesus when they came to get him in the garden, and Peter drew his sword and cut the man's ear off. But Jesus said to Peter, "You're going to deny me 3 times in one night."
That's right.
And Peter shrugged away and did exactly what Jesus had prophesied, but God used Peter. Peter walked away from the ministry and then came back. So we all make bad decisions.
Part of life.
Satan will have us look at the bad things that we did when we should be looking at the good things that God brought us out of. Because we'll say, well, I'm not worthy of this, I'm not worthy of that. Nobody's worthy of anything in front of God.
Right.
But God is calling us to use us to make life better, not just for ourselves, but for people in the community and in the world. Conversely, you have people under the satanic and the demonic forces, like Trump and Musk, and a lot of these politicians out here. They throw out this thing about patriotism. You cannot put country above God. I have traveled from the South Pacific, across the Americas, Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. And you have been in the military. And you've met good people everywhere you've gone.
Oh, good and bad.
And so it's not about the politics of this country.
But the important
it's
thing
about
is you
what
meet
is
good people.
There you go. The decency of humanity.
Yeah.
Promoting what is good, kind, and gentle. The Bible says that you should walk with your God and love mercy. Walk with God and love mercy. It's not about beating people down, brutalizing people, taking advantage of people. And that's why capitalism is controversy, is contradictory to the Bible, because the first century church, it said they brought, those that had brought, so that those that did not have could have something. That was the first century church. identically, the Communist Manifesto says the same thing.
How do you prove to people that know all this stuff and still they go by the wayside? Because when it gets down to it, it's every man for himself, especially amongst black people. Now, we've had to go through this trauma all our lives. You know, we fought amongst each other, the Willie Lynch syndrome, light and dark, and
good hair, bad hair, young,
hair.
old, the whole thing.
You're too nice to the white man. We're going to kill you because
right.
I've had people get mad at me because the person, I'm light-skinned. I mean, only way you get ahead if you're light-skinned, which was a factor.
Back in the day, yeah.
Back in the day, in the 40s in particular. I mean, look at all our leaders. Malcolm.
Redbone.
Redbone. That's why they chose him to lead, because he was light-skinned. Farrakhan. I mean, look at
Elijah Muhammad.
Elijah Muhammad.
But Martin was not light.
No, Martin was
a dark
all
guy.
the way.
Yeah.
But he was a peaceful, spirited man. And they try to... Now, what happened to Martin? He made that last speech at Riverside Church against against the Vietnam War.
Right.
Exactly a year before he was murdered. I should play that tape. That always gets me. What Martin sacrificed and what he went through in life. And when he first began, there was a rift between him and Malcolm, which most youngsters don't understand what was happening. Gil Noble always gives the best presentation of how it was back then, saying how he was, because of the change of names, the change of religion, we have been taught to get around that stuff. It was stupid, you know, the idea of color, because they were laying the sun tanning was a big popular thing back then.
Coppertone.
Coppertone.
You know, Coppertone.
And I remember Cary Grant. He was the best looking guy on television, especially when he got a suntan.
Right.
And color, I mean, that's what my interpretation. My wife always said, "Why do you always bring that up?" Because it was a big thing in the 40s and the 50s.
But you know, the Roman Empire, you know, when people talk about the Romans, the Roman Empire was comprised of all races of people.
Most people won't.
There were generals, there were emperors of Rome who were black.
Yeah.
There were popes who were black. They didn't move on color. They moved on the, as Martin said, the content of the character of the individual.
Right. Exactly.
There were sultans of India. A lot of Indian people, they've been tricked by the British. There were sultans of India who were black.
Yeah.
It's the quality of the individual. And we need to understand that. What Martin said, the Romans understood 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. When I was in Italy, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I'm traveling across bridges that were built before Jesus was born in Italy. I'm entering buildings that are over 600 years old. But the Roman Empire wasn't about Italians. The Roman Empire was about the empire, which took in Africa and parts of Asia.
The world.
And they had governors all throughout the world who had different skin colors. They weren't caught up on the notion of race came about, I believe, in the 15 or 1600s. People moved in clans, tribes, and nations.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the color of the skin.
Well, the Brits sort of, the Brits, the way they treated the Irish for 1,000 years.
Right. And the Irish
and
were not considered,
color,
they were not considered
religion.
white. Right.
The same religion, it was Catholics and Protestants. And that's the madness of humankind. You look at the whites, the Irish and the Brits, I always looked at that. I said, that's insanity. The way they treat their own kind, but then you look at how we treat each other, black people. But on the good side of it, we always had that spirit. Always had that loving spirit. And that's what we got to bring back, that loving spirit that we always, that's the way I was raised. I mean, I mean, I look at the old stuff like Roberta Flack and living. Oh man, that hit me to my spirit.
I had the opportunity to meet her once, and it was at Phyllis Hyman's funeral that I met
That
Roberta.
was another diva. Oh, wow.
And I was at Phyllis's house that morning when she died.
Really?
And one of my partners called me because he knew her. He said, Spoon, come up here to 58th Street. She lived on the west side here on 58th. And a lot of her things have been stolen. The people that were giving her the drugs and everything, they stripped her apartment. Her gold records and everything. And you could see where the images hung on the wall from where the sun had changed the color. What we were able to find out who the woman was, and I called her. She lived on the east side. I said, I'm gonna give you 30 minutes to get back to this apartment, or I'm gonna get a no-knock warrant and break your door in. And she came. They stole recordings, not recordings, but tapes. Remember, we're going back to 1990. Phyllis died in late May, early June. But she had like a big travel bag, like a soccer bag, filled with tapes that Phyllis, her concerts from all around the world. This stuff is not even pressed in music today. But Roberta came to the funeral, and she was so gracious, so nice. But we loved her music. Peabo Bryson, Roberta Flack, the songs that they sang. But when Rev said what did she do? She wrote a music score for not our ancestry, but she put our being to music, you know. What music does to a soul, to all of us in hearing it, it blesses us.
Yeah.
It gives us a joy, gives us a peace.
It brings out the God consciousness.
And, right, you know, the heavenly music, you know, God loves music. He put that in us.
Well, God is love.
You know, yes.
That's the whole essence of all this. That's all we talk about. That's all I talk about. Gilchrist, meaning worker for Christ, and I feel this is my calling to come to you every week and expose you to what my experience of God is. And this week we've had a heavy, because we've experienced a lot of the devil. And that's what the next 6 months, I think we're really going to see the world turn around. I mean, Republicans and all humans are going to recognize the fact that this man's trying to destroy humankind, how we understand it. This is a spiritual awakening. Everybody needs to find the God in them. I mean, really, it's there. I always say the God in me loves the God in you. That's sincerity. I mean, I don't know if you really feel it, but I mean that from the God consciousness in me, because that's how I feel about life. I know there's a God in you somewhere, so we're going to reach out to Donald Trump. We're going to start praying for him, that he finds his good side, and I want everybody that watches this program, and you tell your other friends, we're going to concentrate on saving his spirit.
Yeah.
So he can turn on Elon Musk, because I don't think Elon Musk is savable, because he's a Nazi from the get-go. I mean, Trump is too, and they're not. I think they're all both puppets of the Illuminati.
Well, everybody
and that's
is
another
salvageable.
subject that we need to
know.
talk about.
In our opinion, these guys need to be in hell right now. But for God, everybody is salvageable, because He puts us here. It's a matter of what you choose to do.
What does God do?
You know.
He gives us challenges all the time.
Right.
So this is another challenge for black people. We know you got the spirit in you. I know black people are the spiritual people of the planet. I say that all the time. And we got to reach down to bring out, they're our brothers. We all know decent people, all colors, all frames.
Right.
They're decent human beings all throughout the planet. So all decent human beings have to rise up and take care of the devils. Why is that such a hard thing? Why is that such a hard thing for people? I mean, come on. I mean, don't we recognize the problem? I mean, we recognize the problem, I know. But people are afraid. Are you afraid to be a loving individual? I mean, because you've been hurt in the past? I know I get shy of loving people too much all the time because I'm too nice to some people. But they bring out the devil in you. That's what happens when you try to be nice and somebody messes over you or F's with you. Then, like Trump. That's what he's doing. He's playing us. He's playing you Republicans to believe him. He's a bald-faced liar. And you think lying is good for you? That destroys your system. Because he's crazy. If you watch him long enough, you can see that he's crazy. Just concentrate on watching him. I know my wife never likes to watch him, but I had her sit down just yesterday. I said, watch him, Bev. You'll see that he's crazy. And sure enough, he acted like a nut. He kept repeating himself, telling the same old lies over and over. He's a puppet. Putin's puppet. I said that in 2016 when he won the election. He didn't think he'd win. You have to realize that Trump was trying to get a hotel in Moscow.
Right.
His wife is
from Slovenia.
His wife's father was a KGB man.
Right.
And talk about that. I mean, it's ironic that all these truths aren't known by people. We've talked about it enough here. I know everybody don't listen to me, but I mean, damn. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody else saying the same thing. Why is it that people are so baffled by what's wrong?
You know, there was a prophecy in the scripture which said that even the elect would be deceived.
Right.
And you see it in those quote-unquote Christian nationalists.
Right.
Because you can't be a Christian and a nationalist. The church is universal, it's global.
Right.
So there's no nationality to the church.
Right.
You can't be pro your country and be in the church, because the church, your faith requires you to do certain things and it prevents you from doing certain things. And you'll see that with the Orthodox Jews in Israel, see, they're catching hell. There are videos of them getting their behinds beat just like black people get beat here because they refuse to serve in the military. They said that is contrary.
How about the Zionists?
That is contrary to the Torah. The Zionists are another group. They're not Orthodox. The Zionists are the problem.
Do people understand the difference?
They don't know the difference. Now, just as we had Rabbi David Weiss, and we got to get him back, got to track him down. Zionism is not Judaism. Right. Zionism is a racist, military, and capitalistic agenda. Just as they're talking about, we saw how Netanyahu bombed everything out. Why? Because they don't intend for these people to come back. Right. Trump said they can go somewhere else. We're going to build up this thing and make it. And on the backside, the fact that they have natural gas and they have oil in Gaza. So they intend to steal everything from these people, just as these people here stole it from the Native Americans. And I'm not going to call, I mean Native Americans, stole it from the indigenous people, because it is their land. It is still their land. So the pattern is...
Why is Trump after Greenland? There's oil and gas up there.
Listen, the
People
devil
need to understand that.
The devil is a liar and a thief. That's what the Bible says. And he works through people to do exactly that, to lie and to steal. So we can't concentrate.
Why they wanted Gaza.
Yeah, we can't concentrate on the devil. Let's concentrate on God and have him guide us and direct us, because Satan responds to God. God doesn't respond to Satan. Satan is trying to do everything to upset what God has been doing. But God ain't worried. He ain't worried about, that's like a fly. You ain't worried about a fly. God is going to go ahead and do what he does and use the people. And when I say use, this is in a positive way, because it's an honor for God to use us. It's an honor for God to work through us. That's an honor. Because you sure as hell don't want the devil working through you. So we should be glad that God has called us. He's got us. He's kept us. And he's going to keep us moving in spite of what's going on around. Don't worry about what's going on around. Stay focused on what God is doing. Psalms 91 says, although they fall by the thousands on your left hand and your right hand, it says God will not allow it to come to you.
That's
Read
right.
Psalms 91. It's a heck of a psalm to give you strength, to courage. Most of the people in this country live in two states, fear and denial.
Right.
There are 52 states in this country. Most people live in those two states. I'm not living my life in fear. And I'm not walking in denial of what is and what isn't, and I'm not going with the lie. No matter what has happened, God will sustain us. I've been shot at, I've been shot. I've had people tried to kill me numerous times. I'm still here. I'm not Superman.
Well, everybody has to understand that you have a devil in you too. Now, you have to take that devil in you and lock it up somewhere and save it for defenses. You have to defend yourself with the devil in you, because that's the only way you can feel. Because God is love. God is, and actually you have to rationalize with your own self and which person you like in you. You gotta look in the mirror and talk to you.
The man in the mirror.
The God in you. Just sit there and talk to her. See, I live life with God was my woman. My mother was God. That's the most loving energy I know ever existed, as far as I'm concerned, personally. But I was fortunate enough to have a mother like I had. I'm sure a lot of you have the same thing, because this is the first love energy that you know about.
Right, right. You're right. That's true.
You know, what else?
That's true.
But men, the way they treat women, I mean, sometimes that's why we have the problems we have. They create life. So for all men out there, honor your woman on Women's Month.
Hey.
Understand that God's a female.
Yes, he's male and female.
Who put
the
you
whole
here?
essence of who we are
put
is
you
him.
here? How did you get here? How did you get here? Through mommy. So understand that that's the loving energy that's inside you. So when the devil, which is the macho man, I'm an ex-Marine, so I know how to kill. I know that devil in me. And I had to put him in and lock him up, because he was causing too many problems with the love energy in me. So as a human being, I reach out to all of you, say the God in me loves the God in you, and the devil in me is going to take care of Donald Trump and the devil in him. And so we've got to fight the system, and power to the people, to the humans that love God. Love yourself. Understand that you are made in the image of God. And that's love energy, especially the men who are afraid to love or didn't have a nice mommy.
That too. Yeah.
You didn't have a nice mommy, you're in trouble, because you hate all women. And you got to have women in your life, because that's the love energy. And peace and love to all. God bless. Power to the people.